it's bad, then I think of people like my first guest today. I think of people who know what bad is and where bad is, people that dedicate their life to helping other people. And quite frankly, if Dr. David Callaway doesn't make it to heaven, I don't have a shot. That's right. He's a U.S. Navy veteran and professor of emergency medicine at Carolinas Medical Center. But here's the important thing for me and why we asked him to come on. He joined Team Rubicon in 2011 as the chief medical officer. I've got all these notes in front of me of what Team Rubicon is, but when you're the head of it, I think it's best that you explain to people what Team Rubicon is. Dr. Callaway, thank you, sir, for coming on.
Hey, Joel, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Could you give people a little...
Good to be back in the Midwest.
Yeah, you belong here, even though you're going...
I know.
All right. Could you tell people what Team Rubicon is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the chief medical officer for Team Rubicon. So I run our medical operations and strategy, and then we obviously have a CEO named Bartella Cruz. So Team Rubicon is a veteran-run disaster response organization and international humanitarian aid organization. So we're a nonprofit organization started in 2010 after the Haiti earthquake, when a couple of combat experienced Marines came back from Iraq and Afghanistan and saw the Haiti earthquake and thought they could put their skills to use. And from this ragtag band of 8 veteran do-gooders, we've grown into about 150,000 volunteers nationally in the U.S. Over the last 12 years. And we do a fair amount of work domestically when you think about like flooding, hurricanes, tornadoes, in terms of route clearance, debris management, helping people out with their homes that are damaged. And then internationally, we do mostly medical relief work. And so in the last few years, we've been verified by the World Health Organization as one of their go-to teams. And we've done COVID response work for the last couple of years. We were down in Haiti during the earthquake, and then most recently, we're in Eastern Europe in response to the Ukraine crisis.
And to me, that's just absolutely amazing. The background that people have with the military, by the understanding you get there, and then to be willing to go in what, if you're in Western Ukraine, I mean, I'm sorry, but you're in harm's way. And I know there's a lot of people displaced internally in Ukraine. Of course, we see the stories of individuals that have gone into Poland and other countries looking for, just a place to hide. But give people an example of what your team is doing in Western Ukraine.
Yeah, so we have basically we've got teams we have a what we call our operations centers in eastern Poland, and we have a medical team in Hungary, and then we have a larger medical and training team in western and now central Ukraine. And so what we focus on, Joel, whenever there's a crisis like this, and sadly I've been in too many of them, you have the trauma of the actual war. So the people getting shot and blown up, and that's what we're seeing on the news in the East. And it's very acutely traumatic. It's very dramatic. And then you have what is often lost in the conflict, which is what you just hinted at, the massive displacement of people. And so the numbers are somewhere on the order of about 7 million internally displaced people within Ukraine, and about another 4 million or so, I haven't looked at the numbers today, about another 4 million who have crossed over into Poland, Hungary, Romania, Moldova. And so what our teams have done is we're focused on the internally displaced people and the refugees. And so we are providing urgent care, primary care, checkups, emergency care as needed, with a series of mobile teams that go to these, what have become basically ad hoc camps. So think about a church gymnasium, tents outside a train station, these areas where 200, 300, 400 people have basically moved and set up temporary homes, and we provide their clinical care, some degree of mental health support. And then a lot of it is, frankly, showing these individuals that their story is being noticed in the world. People care, people are there, and they're offering assistance. The second thing we're doing is now moving to a training and capacity building mission with our local partners in Ukraine. So helping them to learn some of the lessons we've learned over the years in terms of how do you care for patients who have trauma, so the gunshots, the blast, the victims, how do you do that most effectively and with what resources? So we're working with local partners to do that. That falls back to our partnerships with a lot of academic institutions. So Team Rubicon is partnered with my health system, which is Atrium Health, the University of Colorado, and then we have informal relationships with some other big health systems. And so we're able to bring these people who are clinicians who actually train the future doctors for a living in the U.S., and we're able to put them into these situations where they're able to also help train some of the Ukrainians on medical care.
So, Dr. Callaway, what you just described is something you're trained to do, and it's your calling. I get that, but to do that, you've got to mix in the politics of a country, giving you information, being in harm's way. Maybe politics isn't the right word, but the danger is probably the best way of putting it. How do you handle all that? Because it's one thing to take a physician, it's another thing to take a diplomat. I mean, how do you work all those things through?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Joel, and so I think there are. It's obviously a spectrum. So my background is actually in health security. So I have a master's degree in national security, and that's relevant because there is the physical security part of how do you move a team safely into a conflict zone in an area where the culture is maybe a little bit different and languages are different. And we've got a great group of experts who understand how to do that. And so first is, doing an assessment, understanding the landscape. The second is making sure you have trusted local partners and that you have individuals who speak the language. The third is that you act in a respectful way to the community where you're responding and serving. And then once you do that, you build trust, and that is the main way that you build security for your teams. There are a lot of technical things that get done as well. The other piece, though, which you hinted at, and you weren't sure whether to call politics, is politics are real and they matter because this is a sovereign nation. And perhaps more importantly for us is there are governing international rules to how you provide humanitarian aid, and it's international humanitarian law. Some of it's linked to the Geneva Convention, and part of these are these principles of how you respond. So it's independence, neutrality, impartiality, and humanity. So when we go to serve, we are serving the victims of this conflict. And frankly, that means whether they're Russian or Ukrainian or Polish, men, women, we are there to serve the people in need, and we can't take a side in the conflict. And that's hard, right? That's hard when all of the news and all of the perception seems to point towards, a good versus evil war. And we all have our personal opinions, but as an organization, as a humanitarian organization, we have to maintain neutrality. Our job is to care for the people in front of us who need life-saving medical care, who need mental health care, and that's what we're there to do. And so we do have to be diplomats.
The mechanics. You put a mobile unit on the ground in Ukraine. You don't want people to know it's there. You want it to get to in Western Ukraine. You want it to get to the people in need. And also you need gear in it. How do you physically make that work, Dr. Callaway?
Yeah, Joel, I mean, growing up in the Midwest and being a scout, right? Like this, it's about being prepared, right? And I think about my mom would never let me go deer hunting in November without having accountability and a plan for communication, a plan for transportation, a check-in time. And it may seem crazy, but that's the core of how you do it. And so first is you have the right processes in place and you prepare the team, you select the right team, you make sure they're vetted and they trust each other. And then it's accountability. So when you go into an area like this, you need to know where your people are. You need to have, for us, we have redundancy in everything we do, and it goes back to the whole 2 is 1, 1 is none. So, we have 2 or 3 or 4 different ways of communicating. We have backups on our vehicles. We have, contingency plans for if something goes bad, if someone gets hurt, if someone gets lost. And then we train that, and you have to train it so it becomes second nature to people. And we can always be better at that. And the key is always having that growth mindset where you're always thinking about what is the changing environment and how do you make it better. Now, for us, one of the challenges, it was interesting what you just said is, we don't want people to know where we are. The challenge is we do want people to know where we are. We want the right people to know where we are. We want patients and communities who are in need to know that they can access us. But then in a situation like this, understanding that, we are a little bit more of a target than if we were to respond to, a flood in New Orleans. But our teams are pretty used to operating in environments that are unstable. Again, whether it's Haiti earthquake or a cyclone in Mozambique, and you have to have some common sense. And we try to make sure that our teammates do. Eyes up, look around, be polite. Don't do things like travel alone in the dark. And if you have people who are constantly reinforcing that, then your teams tend to do pretty well.
How about the challenge of the language, Dr. Callaway?
Yeah. So again, fortunately, our teams have worked all over the world, and so we would never just go into a country where we don't speak the language or have language assets. So in this particular case, we were exceptionally fortunate. There's a strong Ukrainian diaspora in the U.S., and so our initial team that I was with had a Ukrainian American pediatrician, so spoke fluent Ukrainian. We had a Ukrainian who was in the U.S. on a Fulbright scholarship, who was able to take a leave of absence and come with our team. And so we always make sure that we have both the language skill and then a plan for expanding that. And so what we did when we got in country, we had natural first language speaking Ukrainians. We then worked to build relationships with local university and local health systems in order to also recruit and partner with bilingual healthcare providers in Ukraine who could then work with our teams. Some of them were medical students. Some of them had just graduated from college. Some worked actually at the hospitals. And we always make sure that we have that capability, because if we can't communicate with our partners, we can't communicate with patients, it makes it really hard to provide care.
Dr. Callaway, what about, it's clear to see why some of the people that know you, and I'm not just trying to blow smoke at you, just respect you and the people that you surround yourself with, your work, but what about people that would want to help? Or how do you get chosen? Is it because of military background? What makes a person eligible to join Team Rubicon?
Yeah, so we're about 70% veteran and 30% of people who have never served in the military is sort of our general composition. And we're a volunteer organization, just like the Red Cross or United Way. So you can sign up, and then you get on our roster. But to be on the international team, because it's a more specialized and frankly has a higher risk profile, once you sign up, you have to go through about 12 or 15 hours of online training about humanitarian aid, humanitarian care, the principles of humanitarian response. Then we do personal interviews, and we do secondary interviews where we vet applicants ideally. And then we've reinstituted, which we had a pause on this, but we have what we call international team leader training course. And so if you're going to be one of our team leaders, or if you're going to be one of our senior medical providers, we do this week-long course down in Texas where you go through the rigor of understanding the processes and procedures, but then you spend about 4 days in the field going through scenarios, leadership scenarios, ethical dilemma scenarios. And we have a cadre of experienced people who both do evaluations, but also do mentorship and coaching, so that when you're done with that, we have people who understand the core values of Team Rubicon, understand the international humanitarian principles, but then also can work together. And we know we'll be good teammates, because you can have really smart people, really good doctors, and you put them in an environment and they just don't mesh with the team, and that harms the mission, decreases their ability to care for people, and then it puts them at risk.
I know we just have a little bit of time left, but getting the people to trust you, in 30 seconds or less, there's people you're trying to help out there, and they've got to trust you. How hard is that?
Yeah, well, it depends. Are you talking about patients, or are you talking about our team? Because I think they're different.
I'm talking about if I'm a victim in Western Ukraine and somebody comes up to me right now, how do I trust them?
Yeah, well, one is, I think you have to be humble, and so we try to always partner with local providers so that there is trust. They don't just see some outsiders coming in to provide care. Mm-hmm. We always try to focus on listening, focus on being humble, focus on trying to understand what the issue is, rather than just offering a U.S. based solution to what we think is a problem.
Well, clearly they got the right guy to do that. Dr. Callaway, thank you, sir. Keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, David Callaway. What a person.